On this week's episode, we're here with Derek Du Chesne, the founder and CEO of Better You, betteryoucare.com. Better You is a holistic mental health and wellness company offering at-home ketamine treatment, as well as at-home therapy, psychiatry, meta management, a whole host of different treatments. We dive into Derek's story as a founder, his initial reason as to why he started Better You, his inspiration for the company, as well as how his mission to make innovative treatments more accessible to people all across the country has come to fruition over the past half decade or so. And we also touch on the differences between at-home ketamine versus in-clinic. And with that, I welcome Derek Du Chesne.
Hi, I'm Derek Du Chesne, and I'm the founder of Better You. At Better You, we focus on holistic mental wellness, as well as functional health, integrative psychiatry. We specialize in at-home ketamine therapy, peptides, all kinds of different things, sexual health, weight loss, whatever it is that we can do to help you become better. Today, I'm excited to talk about how we've been able to increase accessibility and lead innovation with ketamine therapy, and also highlight the important differences between ketamine therapy companies and the importance of wraparound care and support and giving people the love when they need it most.
I guess let's start with, why did you start Better You?
I started Better You to help prevent suicide. And that was the sole and only goal when starting it. When I went through my own journey and struggles with mental health, and have experienced or lived most of my life without depression, had bad days, and have had tough times, but never suicidal. And when I reached a point where that's all I was thinking about for weeks, for months, and even then, after having went through traditional, like my therapist and psychiatrist and other medications, that I was still anti-trying ketamine therapy, because I was like, my friends were like, take mushrooms. And I was like, if I take mushrooms, I'm probably going to go jump off a bridge. It's not going to be great. Because I know how mushrooms had made me feel at a macro dose, and I was in a very fragile state. And I thought ketamine was a horse tranquilizer. And fortunately, on a very, very, very tough night for me, a friend came over and stayed the night. And the next day, he was like, hey, you're not doing good. I want to take you somewhere, and it's going to help you. And took me to a ketamine clinic. And yeah, that one session probably saved my life. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So you were like, went through an experience yourself.
Yeah.
And to think that you could have been so low, and now you're running a company that has like a lot of employees, so high functioning, and how it could affect anyone.
Yeah, I think that, when you watch TV and somebody, growing up, you look at all these well-known celebrities that have taken their lives, and the same kind of chatter in my household and communities, like, how could they, right? How could they? They had everything. If I had just one smidgen of what they have, I'd be happy. Mm-hmm. How could they do that to their kids? How could they do that to their family? How could they? How selfish. I would never do that. I don't think anybody makes that decision, to that last and final decision to end their life because they're thinking straight, right? Like, it goes against our human nature. It goes against, like, we're designed, it's like hardwired in us to survive. Mm-hmm. And I think that our brains are very tricky machines. They can work for us or against us. And when you get into this pattern of whether it's external or internal things that happen, and you get in this dialogue and these repetitive negative thoughts, and you start telling yourself, that you're not worthy of living, that you're not worthy of love, that the world would be better off without you, that all you're ever going to be is a fuck up, and everything that you touch or everything that you ever try to love, breaks or leaves you, and it's all your fault, and you kind of just can I think that's a normal feelings that everybody will go through, mm-hmm. but it's not normal to have that, the more you go down those paths, the more repetitive and deeper those kind of patterns can get. And I didn't know anything about, repetitive thought patterns. I just thought it was me, right? I didn't realize, I think what ketamine therapy did for me was separating me from that little inner roommate, that monkey mind, and quieting that inner critic and making me realize that, like, that's not who I am. These are just crazy things running through my head.
Yeah. Almost like a virus, a computer virus that.
Yeah. And it can happen. I think it can happen to anybody. I think, you get the shit kicked out of you enough for long enough. And it depends on where the cracks in the armor are.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so sneaky and subtle initially. Yeah. Next thing you know, it's your primary dialogue.
And we recently launched for Better You, a psychiatric med management, holistic psychiatry. And for years, our patients would say, "Hey, like I had a similar experience to me, and went to my psychiatrist and was put on this pill that didn't work. Flipped the page, increased the dosage, and just went through that system until things get really bad. I want to help get off of these things." And it hurt me personally because I was like, we can't help you get off of these medications because our prescribers aren't the ones prescribing it. And I also wasn't ready morally to say, hey, like, we're going to help, we're going to be a part of the psychiatric treatment side of things, right? And now looking at, like, I think that what's with a lot of people, like, the difference is I've spent my entire life in adversity. I've spent my entire life seeing the bright side of life and going through ups and downs and challenges and a lot of crazy abnormal things, growing up and early on. And I still always saw the bright side of life. After I was prescribed antidepressants, things got worse and worse and worse, and suddenly I didn't see that bright side anymore. I didn't see the brightness at all anymore, and I just felt like I was like speaking a foreign language to everyone, and vice versa. And it just got darker and deeper and worse. And I think that I think that it's a shame that people are going through really tough things, but then they go for help, and the first thing when you go see somebody for depression is, take this pill, you'll get better. And then also, like, most of the time, not a path to get off of it, right? Like, these are supposed to be temporary Band-Aids, right? How many people that take Xanax and they're like, oh yeah, I took Xanax for 2 months and then I was no more Xanax,
Anxiety free.
Yeah.
Just
No,
like
they're like, you got any Xanax?
Yeah. You got more?
You got any, like, it's I think that there's a place for these things, but I think that the overprescribing and overdiagnosing is very real, and it's messing up a lot of people. And
it's like problem solution. It's like, we have a problem, this is the only solution that we have as of modern day right now, but obviously things are changing. So take me back, I guess, to that, like, initial you go into that ketamine treatment. Like, what do you experience and how do you come out of it where you are like, I need to start this business?
So I didn't think about it as starting a business. I didn't think about it as helping other people. I went in, I guess I'll start with, my experience with the medicine.
Yeah.
So I went in a really, like, me taking a shower or brushing my teeth, was a rarity at that point. But it was just really, everything was a struggle. Getting out of bed was a struggle. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to do anything. And, like, I was also, like, more financially stable than I'd ever been. And so it wasn't the things that I thought would, I thought once you have this, or once you do this, or once you accomplish this, your problems just go away. You're happy. And I was, like, in this kind of prison of my own making. And, when I went in for that one session, it took me from this unrecognizable shell of a human being back to, like, immediately feeling like myself again. So when I went in, I just felt so disconnected from myself, from the outside world, to other people, and almost immediately, like, during, I just felt like this weight was lifted off my chest. Like, I could breathe again.
Wow.
And I felt the sense of connection to, like, most importantly to myself, but, like, to the outside world. And I felt this unity and this oneness. And, like, almost immediately those thoughts of ending my life, which were, that was the plan the night before. Like I didn't even recognize that person almost immediately. I'm like, why would anybody want to do that? Like life is beautiful and life is amazing, and I'm just happy to be here. And those are the thoughts coming into my head, almost immediately after trying it.
Wow. So you go through that amazing experience, 180, see a new light, and then how do you take that light and then
bring it to the world
and then turn it into this? It was the pandemic hits.
Okay.
I, like a lot of people, I looked at suicide. I looked at it as like this was a weak moment of my life, right? It was I thought I was broken, and I was very, very damaged, and I needed help, and I wasn't open to publicly sharing it and talking about it. And the pandemic hit, and I saw a lot of people that were probably going through similar things that I went through. So what led me kind of down this rabbit hole was I had a great company, I had a great career, I had a great relationship, and within a few very short weeks, all of those things kind of took a 180 on me. And I didn't realize it at the time, but my entire identity was based on these external factors, right? It was my happiness was based on my relationship, it was based on my work. And as those things inevitably can and will change for everyone, that once they did, I was on shaky ground. There was no foundation, and like my self, I guess, on the outside looked like a very happy person. And when those were gone, I like just didn't have purpose anymore, and I didn't have. I thought that I'd just been living this delusion. Maybe I was living this lie for years, and that I was fighting for a cause, and that I was making a difference in the world, and that and I think that I'm also a big hopeless romantic, and when you think that your person is your person, and they're unfaithful, and then blame it on you for working too much, that kicked the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And
don't fuck with your head. Yeah.
And your self-worth. And then around the same, this was shortly after the company that I'd helped build was going through an acquisition for $1.2 billion. 7.25% of that was supposed to come to me. I grew up in a little farm town. Household income was less than $50,000 a year, and didn't that's generational wealth, right? And I'd spent 300 days on the road in over 40 countries that year, building to this point. Raised $40 million in growth capital. We did about over $80 million in revenue, and when it got down to it, weeks before, I was severanced.
That'll make me jump off the bridge.
Yeah.
And when I was essentially acquired from a company that I started called Healing Ventures, and they were my supply chain partner. And as a customer, I brought them from 3 million to 25 million in revenue as a customer. And then, so they brought me on as a partner in the company. And then that's when, they kind of gave me, it's one thing when you're running your own company. It's another thing when they give you an expense account and say, go be you. And give you all the resources to go build what we were building, and it was incredible. And I was younger, and I thought like, oh, we got this nice little 4-page contract, and didn't know anything. I thought we were just a couple of guys trying to make a difference. And so all that happened around the same time. I was taking first it was trazodone and mirtazapine. Couldn't sleep, and I was too tired. Then I was taking Adderall. Then I was taking Xanax. And kind of just rotated these things for like 6 months, and I just became all kinds of like angry and depressed. And
so it's a perfect storm. It's like
perfect storm. Yeah, and
loved one.
How many people go through that, right? So the pandemic hits, and I'm like, oh, how many people just lost their jobs? How many people's home family dynamics changed exponentially, right? Like how many people are staying at home now with kids or without, and realizing work is, the dynamics change, right?
Yeah.
And so I saw a lot of, I just felt like it was my response. In my mind, I thought that I discovered the cure for suicide because it helped me so instantly and immediately. it was very powerful. And so 6 months or so after the pandemic, a friend of mine, her sister, was the head of epidemiology at Stanford, and I went up to have a dinner and just kind of talk about the vaccines and learn more about what's going on in the world. It was a pretty interesting time, early 2020, and kind of scary for everyone. And so just went up it was supposed to be a weekend, and ended up staying up there for a few weeks. And she was dating an assistant, Dr. George Greer's assistant, who used to be the head of, he was at the head of psychedelic research, and then also the the depression clinic they have there. And so I met this guy, and it was probably the first time I shared publicly, other than with my shrink, that I was like, I think ketamine therapy would save my life, because we're just talking psychedelics at dinner. And he asked me what I'm doing tomorrow. And I was able to come join and sit in for hospice patients doing IV ketamine. And it was so profound and beautiful. And I, like 6 or 7 out of the 8 times I was able to just stay for the couple of days and see that these people were having the same experience. Like, they were coming out saying the same things, very similar things. They were like, I'm no longer afraid to die. I feel happy with the life I've lived. I've never felt this close to God or to the universe. So really powerful stuff.
Very profound.
Yeah. And I was like, this is, but it's unfortunate. Like, why do they have to wait till the end of their life to feel this, And but these people are really sad, right? You've lost all your friends.
Yeah.
You lost your, like, they're like,
hospice is a tough spot.
It's really
tough.
It's really tough. It's really dark. And
energetically.
Especially as an empath, right? Like, you feel that. And it was incredible. And then, I learned not only. Then I was actually looking at psilocybin, and because then I got off of taking antidepressants, and I was doing psilocybin to kind of supplement that. Now I don't take anything other than ketamine therapy, like once every couple of weeks if needed. But I started to look at that and look at at what they were doing at Stanford with like ibogaine, with MDMA therapy, an analog of LSD for Alzheimer's and dementia. And I was like, this isn't just the future of medicine. Like, this is the future of humanity, right? And looking at like all these things, and just self-discovery journey I went through with ketamine, I'm like, how could anybody lead an organization, right? Lead a church, a military group, a school, like, and not be honest with themselves, right? And I think that exploring different psychedelic therapies, it pulls back that curtain on who you are and the work that needs to be done. It doesn't do the work, right? But it helps you realize that.
Shows you.
And so I started to just like, after having that experience, I came back down to LA and I realized that my session was IV ketamine. It was $1,500 for one treatment. There was like 2 clinics doing it at the time in LA. There was no integration. There was no support. It was primarily run by anesthesiologist offices that have zero mental health training. And when I was done with my session, while like I was mentally prepared to go on that journey, I saw like without the right guidance after, like the aftercare, I think is incredibly important, that it could be pretty tough or pretty bad to navigate and pretty hard to navigate. And and that's when I was like also reflecting on where I grew up in Wisconsin. The people that need the help the most and the people that need mental health support the most is people in middle America, little farm town, a lot of ignorance breeding ignorance and hate breeding hate. Yeah. And a lot of small-minded, small town mentality, where a lot of these, negative or hateful ideas kind of grow and breed. And I was like, these are the people that need help the most.
100%. I can relate to that immensely because I grew up in Utah, and it's a predominantly Mormon community there, where over 50% of like my high school was Mormon, for example. And even though there wasn't this perpetuation of negativity per se, it was like subtly infused with guilt and shame. You know what I mean? And if you stepped outside of the box as it pertained to your mental health, right? And there was kind of like the stoners versus the traditional kids who were jacked up on antidepressants and amphetamines. The Mormon kids like justified that, right? But they were totally closed off to any of these innovative treatments. And so I started to experiment in my adolescence and came to a very similar profound realization that these, I believe, are the catalyst to healing ultimately, is kind of dissolving that shame and guilt. But those are the communities that need it most, ironically, more often than not.
What couldn't agree with you more? And Danny, yeah, looking at like the Mormon church, I was opened up to that after starting a mental health care company, because we treat so many people in the Mormon community that were exiled by their families, by their communities, by their friends, all because they, didn't want to follow a belief system, right? And which I think is, a very tragic and kind of, this is an overall theme for a lot of organized religion. If you don't want to follow it, it's obviously taken to an extreme with certain religions, but it's like, isn't the point of religion or God to bring us closer and to help, to love thy neighbor and to help one another? And so it's very tough to see and hard to see. Like I had no idea that, like, especially in Salt Lake, where people like I didn't agree with the church, and now I can't go to family holidays.
Yeah,
right? Like it's
you're ostracized.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, and I'd imagine in Wisconsin it was similar. Maybe not in that there was a predominant religion per se, but dogmatic beliefs and like different kind of cliques, if you will, within the community. Where if you were to step outside of the paved road and pursue entrepreneurship in Los Angeles, even or a different career, different forms of healing, you're kind of the black sheep, if you will, of the community. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's also, I think, like there was a lot of racism in northern Wisconsin, and like, which is, I think, the lowest form, of or highest, I don't know, the lowest form of ignorance. And I think that like there was a guy in, I think it was Colorado, but they did a session of MDMA therapy, and he was a white supremacist and had like a swastika tattoo and everything. Did one session of MDMA therapy and like was like basically went to like witness protection. Was like, I need help getting out of this community because I don't believe in any of this, and I don't know, like I don't even recognize that person like that did, right? So I think that there's, if you look at gang, like I gave somebody that's very, can't share names, but I gave somebody that's very, very well known NFL player, and gave him a session, and he said after his first session, this was Christmas Eve a few years back, and he said, Derek, if we had ketamine therapy in like inner cities, he grew up in a Gary, Indiana, which I believe at the time he said was the murder capital of the country. And he goes, Derek, if we had ketamine therapy, like we would no longer have gangs.
Wow.
And I was like, that's really profound in a perspective that I didn't know or understand. He goes, we were lucky to have, an uncle to talk to, and much less, a father. But he's like, we go to gangs because we want to feel acceptance and belong, and that's where like a lot of this hate is taught, or criminal activity was bred. And I think that's where, the lack of connection to yourself and looking to belong. And he's like, with this, he's like, I just feel like this we would no longer have gangs. And I thought that was a really profound statement.
And I think a big theme there that comes up is really accessibility ultimately, right? Because as you look at these underprivileged communities, whether it's in middle America or in, inner cities, they don't have the resources per se to drop $1,500 on a treatment, right? They don't have the financial capital and abundance to be able to go and have a mental health care day, if you will. And I ultimately think that's another kind of market solution that Better You is providing, is accessibility, right? Which is huge. Even though there might be not be that in-person sort of care per se, you're making these treatments accessible to those individuals who can't afford it at a clinic, which is huge.
Yeah, thank you. That was one of the main factors, was how do we make this more accessible to those communities and people that can't afford it? And we've done it. We've brought the price down by over 10x. And
how much does it cost for a session?
Yeah, walk me through like what a Better You program is.
Yeah, so you you jump on with one of our either therapists or integration coaches or welcome team people, and that's a free consultation to just assess whether this treatment might be right for you. It's not right for everybody. Like if somebody has a history of mania or manic episodes or schizophrenia or psychosis, it's not right for them. So we kind of filter through that, or 10-20% of people, and then providers will filter out through another like 10 to 20% after that. And so making sure that an at-home model is right, because there is that lack of in-person supervision. And so you have that free consultation, and then after that, you jump on with a clinical provider, so another virtual call. And then with a clinician, they'll walk through your medical history, do an assessment, and go through your mental health. And there's certain things, certain diagnoses that we can treat with ketamine therapy. And it's typically the biggest things are depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, OCD, PTSD, all the way down to menstrual cramps, right? So it all depends on, there's chronic pain, there's endometriosis, there's neuropathic pain, fibromyalgia, but primarily what we focus on is the mental health aspect, and even with chronic pain, the mental health issues that stem from chronic pain. So they jump on with a provider, they have their appointment, and then after
really
that,
quick, when you say a provider, because I think a lot of people, especially as it pertains to at-home ketamine, they're thinking that, you jump on with like a provider, whether that be like a coach or a welcome team member, what have you, and they're just going to ship you ketamine straight to your door. But when you say a provider, you're talking like a licensed clinical...
Yes, a licensed clinical prescriber that is regulated by the pharmacy boards, medical boards, the DEA, FDA, all the things. So everything that we do is 100% legal, above board, personalized, tailored, amazing medical care.
Like this provider, hypothetically, if they weren't working at Better, you could go and prescribe prescriptions at a behavioral health clinic.
Yes.
They have the same credentials.
Yeah. So like when I first started this, I started poaching doctors and psychiatrists and nurses from hospitals because it was COVID.
Yeah.
And I'd walk into an emergency room and I'd say, we're opening up Texas. And I would go to an emergency room in Texas and I would go sit there. And
that's amazing.
And I would sit back and I would just watch and see how people are operating. And it was very chaotic. And I would bring business cards with me, and I would say, hey, like, are you happy here? And they'd be like, I can't talk to you right now. Or they're just like, go. And I was like, a telemedicine company.
Exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah. I was like, I have a telemedicine company, and we're treating depression and anxiety with ketamine in the emergency room because they'd already been familiar working with ketamine. So that's why it was easy for me to find those providers.
Sure.
And I give them my card. And every single one of them almost would, like we did in Idaho, and then they would call and they're still with us. And all of our providers come to us and say, this is the best job that I've ever had in the medical field, because a lot of them are like, I got into medicine because I wanted to help people. And then I realized that I'm not helping people.
Yeah.
I realized that I'm treating people.
Right.
That I'm treating chronic care. And I'm not helping people. And they're like, and it's absolutely incredible from the first session to a month or two later, jumping on with a provider and seeing the difference that happens.
So you see a provider.
And then after that, the medication comes in the mail. And
break the medication down.
So the ketamine lozenges or troches, and they're like little, like kind of cough drops, and you put them in the side of your mouth. And so that comes in a kit, and that comes with the blood pressure cuff, because the primary concern that we have medically, if the clinician has already went through all of your medical history and deemed you're a good candidate for it, the primary concern is undiagnosed hypertension. So every patient gets a blood pressure cuff. You must take your blood pressure before your sessions. A journal, because the medicine is a part of the therapy, right? This isn't a ketamine treatment. This is ketamine therapy. And so the journaling and the reflecting and attention setting and all the programming and priming your brain pre and post is the most critical part.
Right.
We also send these little heart diffraction glasses to remind patients that life's all about perspective, and even on bad days, put these on and you see hearts everywhere. So those, and then little positive affirmation cards. What else is in the kit? Meditation mask, and and
I love that mask. I can wear it on the airplane every single time.
Thank you.
It's a nice mask.
And we did a lot of R&D on those.
We have a kit actually right here.
Grab it, please. So you receive the kit in the mail.
So we have the kit right here.
Yeah. So you receive the kit in the mail, and inside there's a meditation mask you wear during your session. You have the medicine. You have a welcome card that explains to you how to use the app. And then you also have, you got the heart diffraction glasses in there. And then the meditation
Let me see those bad boys.
mask.
Oh, yeah. Look like some blue lights.
Yeah.
So
Hearts everywhere.
those, you need to see direct on artificial light, and then it'll turn to hearts.
You need that.
And then
high blood pressure today.
Yeah, blood pressure cuff,
Probably really high right now.
and then your journal and for reflection. So that's everything in there. But before you start the medication, and sticky notes for your positive affirmations.
She's a 170/8. Yeah.
And then, but before you start, so you receive the kit in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
It is mandatory to have a treatment preparation call with one of our therapists or coaches, and that is to make sure that we can answer any questions that you may have after seeing the videos, but B, in that treatment prep, it allows, like, a lot of times we'll go through like a breath work or meditation, and also like 90% plus of our patients have never tried any type of psychedelic, right? So they have anxiety going into the experience.
As you should.
Yeah, as you should. So,
well, not anxiety, but just like,
you're going into an altered state of consciousness. It's something
scary shit.
you've never done. So, so for safety, we require for people to have that extra step with trained professionals to make sure that they can answer any questions that they may have, as well as it's a requirement for them to like check off that they've watched all the videos. And there's a ton of different safety protocols as far as like, not to eat before, using the restroom before. You have to have peer support, so somebody there with you.
Yeah.
And that's more pretty much only so like if you need help getting up to go to the restroom when you're done.
Yeah, God forbid the fire alarm goes off.
Yeah, it just holds space for you. Right. And
I have a question. How is this legal?
So ketamine has been in the medical community for the last 60 years at much higher doses as an anesthetic. So say if you have an infant child and they break their arm and they end up in the hospital, that child, they'll give them a high dose of ketamine, an IV of ketamine, because it's an anesthetic that is very little to no effect on the respiratory system.
Right.
So for anesthesia, it's very, very safe for infants, toddlers,
horses.
And, yes. Multi-use, primarily for humans, but yes, also in veterinary cases. Yeah. Yes, like most medications.
Right.
And it's like saying carrots are for horses, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like pregnancy women.
All the medications.
Yes.
Women that are pregnant, like very gentle creatures.
Yes.
And people that are suffering with suicidal ideation.
Yes.
Sensitive creatures.
And so how it's legal is it's already in the medical community as an anesthetic. Yeah. For mental health in 2019, when Johnson & Johnson got Spravato approved from the FDA, that opened up the kind of floodgates for generic ketamine. Because all the studies around mental health was ketamine was the generic ketamine. And because they were having such profound breakthroughs and profound success, like at Stanford, at Harvard, the psychiatrist said that ketamine is to psychiatry what the microscope was for biology, right? It was that big of a breakthrough of understanding of how we treat mental health and how our brains and how we can treat depression.
That's because ketamine works on the glutamate system, which is like 85% of your brain versus like serotonin, norepinephrine.
And so the whole understanding of how we treat these mental health issues and really focusing on neuroplasticity as opposed to the alternative, which was kind of numbing the brain.
Or it would help your brain produce these chemicals versus allowing your brain to grow these new pathways and work itself.
Yeah. So we're really focusing on neuroplasticity, and as opposed to like dimming your light, it's expanding and increasing brain activity, and so that really opened the floodgates, not just for ketamine therapy and at-home ketamine therapy, but really for if you're looking at the future of psychedelic therapies and alternative treatments.
But how at home? Like in a clinic makes sense to me, right? Like you have a medical provider or you have a registered nurse, but how sending home, like, when was that legalized? And I feel
so
like
in 2020, when the pandemic happened, is when there's Ryan Haight Act, which was, I think, in 2007, and that was enabled because of opiates, and people were getting not seeing doctors in person for pain pills, and then overdosing on opiates. Once the pandemic happened, telemedicine opened up more, and even though it's not an opioid, it's still a Schedule III controlled substance.
Yeah.
And ketamine is incredibly safe, whether it's in clinic or at home when done properly. So the safety profile of it is what really allowed that, and the legal regulatory opening up for telemedicine is why. Because there's one thing if it's regulatory, if it's legal, right? But then you need the medical community and doctors to say, hey, is this safe to be taken at home? So when we started Better You, we started with IV and in clinic. And this was we started doing it in 21. And then we started testing with those same patients that were also IV and Spravato. We started testing with them with at-home ketamine. And we were having exponentially better outcomes with at-home ketamine therapy. Because the patients, so much of this is about your set and setting, and also your mindset, right? So what I mean by set and setting is your environment and your mindset going into it. And when patients, after their session, I think that's a critical piece, is afterwards when you have that time to really process and integrate and reflect on the experience, which you get when you're at home in your bed in a comfortable place to really stay in that neuroplastic window. And when you're in a clinic, immediately that mask comes off and you're like, oh shit, I gotta get an Uber. I got somebody out there. Your brain goes back. Your brain goes from stepping off the hamster wheel and getting away from.
It's a valid point.
It's very valid. I've done it in the clinic too, and I'm like, okay, well now I got to call my ride.
Yeah,
make sure that they're here on
and
time.
the rooms, to optimize the rooms, because we work with so many different clinics, they're 2-hour turnover. They're kind of we got to get them out of here.
And your brain goes from you're stepping off the default mode network, but then you step back into the executive mode where you're back into tasks and decisions making, as opposed to I think the more time you can spend off of that in this free and open space, I think it's a tremendous heart opener. And I think being at home with either a journal, or I prefer to do a voice recorder because I don't like to write afterwards, but just then being strict with the prompts and really being strict with the program. I think that ketamine therapy started in a really incredible place and has come a long way. And it's helped hundreds of thousands of people across the country with at-home ketamine therapy. But I think that there's also some bad actors out there, and I think that we've seen companies come and go in the ketamine therapy space,
both at home and in clinic.
In both instances. And I think that prescribing ketamine daily as an antidepressant is reckless and dangerous. I think ketamine,
and there's companies out there that are doing
that do that with no clinical guidance,
which is scary.
And there's also companies that will give people enough of a dose to sedate them, right? Which is also scary. So, but there's also not a standardized protocol, right? And so we spent a lot of time in R&D, pre and post, and we're still learning every day.
Still figuring it out.
But what I do know is that we've treated over 14,000 patients, and less than 0.5% of those have had adverse reactions. And by adverse reactions, I mean allergies. So itchy or rash, and sometimes it's not even due to the ketamine, that's due to the filler that's in the RDT or the troche. Which
is the actual lozenge.
RDT, rapid dissolving tablet.
With ketamine, and we saw more people with nausea and vomiting in clinic with IVs than what we'd see at home. And I don't know if that was just dosage wise, but it's also when you start at a very low dose, which in clinics they don't, because you come in and you're not oh, well, I just paid hundreds of dollars, I need to feel something, right? With at home, you start at 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams, and see how your body responds to the medicine. And if it's not right for you, or there's an allergic reaction or adverse reaction, or nausea sets in, or whatever the reaction is, which can and will happen, you have that, you've only dipped your toe in the pool as opposed to diving right in. Right?
For sure. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago. I was at ASKP. It's
American Society for Ketamine Providers.
That's what it is. As a dyslexic, I wouldn't have gotten that. All ketamine providers from all different parts of the U.S. And it's interesting because there's almost a turf war. Some of the clinics are run by ER doctors, who ER doctors probably use ketamine more than anyone as far as consistency goes in the ER. You have anesthesiologists whose ketamine is kind of their go-to drug. And then you have psychiatrists who are mental health professionals. And there's a bit of a turf war, but it seems like on all three fronts, the common enemy is at-home ketamine. Now, mind you, all these are providers that have clinics or work with clinics. What are your thoughts to the providers that are like, the only way that ketamine should be used to treat individuals is within a clinic?
I think that those providers should stop looking at their finances over patient needs.
Okay, tell me more.
I think that it's if you have a patient that lives in northern Wisconsin, that the nearest clinic's 3 hours away, and it's $500 to walk through the door, and that you're saying that those same patients for $99, shouldn't be able to be treated at their home with medication that's coming from a mental health professional that's probably got more training than most ER doctors and anesthesiologists, that a program that's treated probably exponentially more than their clinic has, and created wraparound care and ongoing support. Like, I think a lot of the issues that I see with clinics is that you go in, you get your medicine, you do it, you go home. There's not that ongoing wraparound care and support, and I think that that's a critical piece of what we do. And I think that the increasing accessibility to a drug that's safe. I could see if there was people overdosing on ketamine, at-home ketamine therapy. Are there? No.
Well, Matthew Perry.
Well, he was
are you serious?
vials.
I was trying to tee you up on that one.
Yeah, I was like, Matthew Perry. First, that was clickbait. Matthew Perry overdosed, died of polypharmacy, and he was zero to do with ketamine therapy. Because his drug dealers happen to be doctors does not mean that he died from ketamine therapy. Matthew Perry died.
Yeah.
Matthew Perry died from mixing opioids and ketamine,
Barbiturates, or not barbiturates, Xanax,
and benzos in a hot tub. So
not the hot tub.
Yeah,
the hot tub was a culprit.
I think the hot tub, yeah.
Yeah, the hot tub will get you every time.
So the clickbait, the ketamine therapy, like, it was so interesting because these articles wouldn't even mention the opiate. They'd say, he was on a drug to help prevent opiate addiction.
Yeah,
but not that this is a hardcore opiate.
I think a strong one too.
Yeah, it seemed like a hit piece of it.
And so it was definitely a hit piece, and it's unfortunate. I love Matthew Perry. I love Friends, and it's very tragic what happened to him.
Yeah, it's very sad.
But to say and it's I think like that journalism is sensationalized, and it made ketamine therapy, it demonized it, when like the reality is that kind of reckless journalism could kill people.
Yeah.
Like, it could stop somebody that's suicidal or that's having a real problem from trying ketamine therapy because they think it's going to kill them. When the reality is that you could go in, you could be getting IV ketamine at extremely high doses, like 20 times the dose that you're going to be taking with ketamine therapy, and be completely safe 99.9% of the time. So that's, I think that the safety profile of ketamine is astronomical. It does change your, it's an altered state of consciousness, but when done properly and having peer support there with you and following protocols.
How do you ensure that there's peer support?
So
like, what happens if I'm like, oh yeah, my friend's here, and it's like,
yeah, absolutely. So
Pearl the dog.
Well, A, you're signing off on it. B, for the treatment preparation, you have to have somebody there with you that is like signing off that they are your peer support.
But how easy is it for me just to sign?
That like we would need during the video. So
okay, so you do a video session.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then also for people that don't have peer support, they're like, okay, I had peer support here, but I don't have it for this session.
Yeah,
we do provide virtual peer support.
Okay.
So then we have somebody there virtually.
That's
that
nice.
Like, and people love those sessions because like not only is it like you have somebody there like just there in case you need them, but a lot of times we'll do like a guided like breath work or meditation to help prime them to go into the session, right?
For sure. Yeah, when I worked at the clinic, I would always set intentions with the people, and they'd be like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. And you kind of need a bit of a dialogue. You're like, well, why are you feeling anxious?
Let's get out of your head.
Yeah, feeling anxious about work. Okay, well, what's coming up with work? It's my boss and relationship with and then there's like, it really kind of unravels. It's like a ball of yarn.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that thought process yourself, which I know, I worked at a clinic for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that you touched upon were 100% true. Like, we had a provider who was not on site. They would be messaging. Sometimes they wouldn't get the messages. The nurse would be like, how much do I dose this person? And then never responded.
They don't get treatment.
So it would be like the nurse looking at me being like, okay, where are we at with this patient? You know? And 100%. I remember getting calls from people being like, this was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. And I was like, what? Like, why?
Yeah.
They're like, no one followed up. Nobody followed up. So I think that there are definitely a lot of people that see like in-person clinics to be a really good option. But I think that there are pros and cons to all of these modalities with ketamine, whether it's at home or it's in clinic.
Yeah, there's not a perfect system, right?
Yeah.
There's not a perfect treatment. And
it's
ketamine,
early days too. It's so young.
It is.
It's such a young industry. I mean, this has like really popped off in the past like 5 years.
And I want to reiterate, like, we do treat patients in office, right? We started this treating patients at office and having them do ketamine therapy at home and seeing patients liking it because it was much more affordable, B, doing it on their own time so they don't have to worry about getting an Uber home or getting a friend to drive them home, and C, like having that, like, almost every single time, we're like, what did you like about like difference between the clinic? And we have a nice environment in our clinic. You guys have been there.
That's cool.
And patients would be like, I'm at home and I get to not think about like, you know, my brain going into that task mode or to like what's the next thing I have to do, and being able to properly like digest and integrate and reflect. Because if you're not spending that time to integrate the medicine and actually do the work, you're just getting high. And that's with any type of psychedelic therapy. You're going to have these aha moments and these epiphanies. Like, how many people you know that are on ayahuasca and you see them, they're like, it changed my life. And 2 months later you see them and they're the same asshole.
Los Angeles spiritual bypassing.
Yes. So it's doing the work, right? There's
it's a lot of work.
It is. And making sure that you have the mental health support. Like, we have a companion app that 24 hours a day you can message like somebody on there. There's programs around grief, sexual trauma, IFS, your childhood trauma, veterans, first responders, and military guys, like reintegrating back into society, high performers around executives and athletes, like the mentality the athletes go through when they get drafted out or traded down. And it's, we try to like take different experts and different people from all walks of life, and a lot of it's patient contribution, and say like, hey, this really helped me with this. And the biggest and like one of the first programs we did was around grief, and like we had a patient that we treat a lot of grief, but we had a patient that lost her 8-year-old daughter, and within like a couple of months after starting our program, she'd written 2 books on grief and was going on a book tour a few months later.
Oh my god!
And now she coaches people, like, you know, on our program that are going through similar things.
Wow,
right?
That's beautiful.
And so it's like we're learning every day, and we're not, you know, there's no perfect answer, but we're helping a lot of people, and I'm really proud of the work that we do.
You should be.
Yeah, you should be. And I think being objective about it too, like the fact that you administer in both locations, at home and in clinic, and you understand the pros and cons to both. I think the biggest one for at home, obviously, being accessibility, but then, you know, in clinic, maybe having that human face-to-face interaction, and you can be objective about it too.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Instead of being territorial and like.
Well, in the like delivery system, right? For veterans, especially, we treat a lot of veterans. You give a veteran, their whole programming and training is based on being in control, right? And if you're not in control and you don't know where the exits are, you know, your brain, you could freak out. You could trigger your PTSD, and you put a veteran into immediate IV or IM into an altered state of consciousness, and you take them really deep, really hard, you know, down the rabbit hole. It can be very traumatic for them, right?
Yeah, some people kind of freak out with IV.
Exactly. They freak out with IV and they freak out with IM. So like, we'll have people that would come into Better You to the clinic and be like, or referrals like from the VA, and say like, I got a really tough patient, or I'm going through a really tough time, and they'll say, I want to do ketamine IV, and like, well, I was in war, or other people are like, I have severe sexual trauma, and we're like, let's not do IV. We'll do oral, in office. We'll say we're going to start very low dose, and it's going to be like a medication enhanced meditation, and we're just going to start very slow, and we're going to breathe into it, and we're going to stay present with it, and we're just going to see how this goes, right? And sometimes people will never get over 200 milligrams, right? They'll be at a low oral dose, and that's what they need to then take advantage of the next 3 to 7 days of that neuroplastic window to then do the work, to then journal, to reflect, to get cut off in traffic and not get out of the car and hit somebody, to take that pause in between their triggers, and I think it's a beautiful thing. And I'm not saying that what at home is the answer to everything. I'm not saying in clinics the answer to everything. Also, I'm not saying that ketamine is the answer to everything, right? If it's a new flavored brownie that comes out next week, that's going to help people, we're going to be the ones educating people and giving it to them as an option. Yeah. If it's yoga, meditation, breath work, healthier habits, positive affirmations, these are all things that are part of our program, and we want to give people, you're going through a tough time, here's 15 different things that we can choose from, and let's figure out what works for you. Yeah. And so it's not Better You is not a ketamine therapy company. Better You is a holistic wellness company. We started with ketamine because it's something that helped me a ton, and I wanted to help others with suicide. And from the impact that we have, I've never taken $1 from investors, and we're crazy. Almost 5 years in, and everything is self-funded, and this whole business has been built on helping, how do we give patients the best experience? And now that we're growing and expanding, we are doing our first capital raise, but we're growing and expanding so we can give people more treatment options and in more states, right? And
it's not easy to run a business in general, nonetheless, in the mental health space, and then also looking at accessibility and being able to have affordable options. And then
ketamine therapy is incredibly expensive to do. If you look at, at other alternative mental health treatments, incredibly expensive to do it right.
Okay, yeah, tell me that, because when I first started posting on TikTok, all the comments were what about my drug dealer? I'll just get it from the streets. Obviously, it's very different. We don't want to be lazy.
I tell people, go ahead. I'm like, if you want to do ketamine, because people are oh, this is so expensive. I'm like, you're paying for therapists. Yeah. You're paying for the companion app. You're paying for the support system. You're paying for the human-to-human connection. Right. You're paying for a evidence-based treatment model that's very successsul.
You're continuing to build the program too.
Yeah, exactly. It's always every week where we're adding in new programs, right? So it's people that well, ketamine's cheap, I get it. Great, we're not drug dealers. Yeah. You want to get ketamine cheap? There's 3 other companies you can go do that from, right? Yeah. You want to get ketamine and not talk to anybody else? Great, we're not that company. Mm-hmm. And we're also priced, to not be that company. Right. If somebody's oh, well, I want to try ketamine because I think it may help me. If you want to try ketamine therapy and you think it might help you, and you want to follow a protocol and talk to a therapist and talk to a licensed psychiatric clinician and have that follow-up wraparound care and support, and actually do it for yourself and the right reasons, then that's what we're here for, right? If you're if you want to do ketamine, there's a company out there for $100 a month. You just go get your ketamine. It's not us.
That's wild.
Yeah, right. It's not us. So
it's kind of the Wild West out here on these streets.
It is. And I think that it's also we've seen it before, where companies get shut down for doing bad business. Yeah. And I think that prescribing ketamine as an antidepressant is reckless, because it's not, it has antidepressant effects, but it's not meant to be a daily pill. It's not meant to be a daily treatment. All the safety data around Spravato is once, maximum twice a week. And you give your brain, your bladder, your kidneys enough time to flush, detox, process the medicine. When done properly, say once a week, long term, incredibly safe. Right. But when you're and people always say well, there's not studies around microdosing. I'm like, yeah, it's called daily use, and there's studies around abuse. Yeah. And
I was just at that conference, and they were talking about long-term use of Spravato. Spravato is the insurance-backed version of ketamine. There's a nasal spray, and they had individuals on a bi-weekly cadence, and they were doing that for 2.5 years, even 5 years, and they were monitoring them, and it was completely safe. So there has been long-term studies to show, because I think people come up with bladder problems, bleeding, these things.
Ketamine, when done properly, the right dosage and right frequency, incredibly safe. Yeah. Incredibly safe.
With the space that we're in and the future of psychedelics and the FDA approvals pending, because the drug is wrapped around like misuse and then the use within a party like setting, and not many, I feel like drugs have come in and they've become like they're established within the medical community and then they're misused. Where here it's like was established in the medical community but not for behavioral health, misused, and now in the behavioral health. So it's almost like you're constantly just fighting misconceptions or ideas of this substance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But if you look at like, you know, the risk versus reward, right? And like, okay, you have this amount of the population that's abusing it. Okay, then you have this astronomical amount of people that have done it, that have found tremendous growth and healing from it, and have helped them get off of antidepressants, have helped them from not be suicidal, has saved lives. We have patients that'll say, I came to this because I had chronic stress from work and anxiety, and I had no intention of quit drinking alcohol. And they're like, now I'm a better father, I'm a better parent, a better husband. I quit drinking. Like, you know, we have like, and I always think about the ripple effect too, right? And we have patients that, you know, are no longer abusive to their partners, right? We have patients that like physically abusive, because they realize that like what they're doing is really, really bad. And when you can take a step out of your own cycle and your own thing, that, you know, your own brain, and look at the things in your life, the choices you make, the people in your life, your career, your friends, your substances, and you look at those from an outside perspective, it changes everything. I think it was Wayne Dyer said that when you change the way that you see the world changes. I think that's where the real power of ketamine therapy is giving people that perspective shift. And when you look at it, you know, it's abuse profile. Like, yes, is it recreationally abused? Yeah, that was like way before ketamine therapy, you know, was a thing. But you also look at, I mean, how many times you go to a party and there's, you know, people don't look at it even as abuse. They're just taking their meds, right? Like they're just taking their sleeping pill. They're just taking their Xanax. They're just taking their Adderall. Oh, I'm tired. Taking Adderall. You know, like that's
there's a fine line between abuse and
use and abuse, and I think that. If you look at in comparison to other mental health, like I used to get on stages and panels, and I remember one in particular a few years ago, and it was a psychiatrist, and he looked me in the eye in a room full of people and said that I think that ketamine therapy is reckless. And I said, and she was a child psychiatrist. I said, yeah. I was like, you're making this too easy on me. And it's like, how many children have you prescribed amphetamines to? It's like, oh, well, that's irrelevant. I'm like, how many children? You know, I'm like, how many children have you prescribed antidepressants to? How many, you know, I'm like, you want to talk about side effects, you know, you want to talk about profile, you're talking about like weight gain, sexual dysfunction, suicidal ideation, dependency. I was like, so you want to talk about reckless? I was like, let's look at the laundry list of side effects here, and significantly less side effects here. And like we get patients that will call us and say, I have a 16-year-old child. And we say, well, sorry, we can't treat him. And that mom or dad will start crying and say, my kid attempted suicide and I don't know what else to do. And we tried everything. And that's when I'll call one of our doctors and say, hey, we got to help this person. And it's, you know, it's not up to me. It's always up between the patient and the doctor. Sometimes they'll say yes, sometimes they'll say no, but it's, you know, then you look at on the outside of it where somebody like, wait, you treated a 16-year-old with, you know, ketamine therapy? Like, well, the 16-year-old already been on 5 years of Adderall, Zoloft, you know, and these other things that are really, you know, probably not great for where they're at today, but they've already also like their parents are afraid that they're going to wake up and their kid's going to be dead. Like
there's no treatment for acute suicidal ideation. So if my kid's like, I'm on my way off the bridge, I'm like, tranquilize them. Like whatever you got to do to like make sure that
lock them up.
It's
like,
you lost a job.
Spravato was the first drug that was FDA approved for suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
And the only reason that you know ketamine isn't FDA approved for that is because it's a generic. Right. There's not money in doing it. Yeah. Like so that's esketamine. They're now the final stages of R-ketamine being prescribed. You know, for depression, right? So it's like, oh, the S is an R, but generic no. You know, it's so
generic is both R and S.
Yes.
So they basically just separated it.
They separated it and said, "Oh, we can patent it and make money with it." So yeah, it's interesting.
It's tough.
The economics of healing are,
it's really that's a whole.
It's expensive to be healthy.
Yeah. Well, talk to psychiatrists
and it's profitable to help people stay sick.
Yeah. Talk to a psychiatrist and ask them how many people they've healed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a really tough conversation. I'm like, what do you do? How do you go about it? Yeah, I just think even putting like pregnant people on antidepressants and how that affects the fetus. And it's only been really like 40 years, 50 years of research.
Yeah.
And they're not really doing in-depth like harm reduction studies. I'm sure there are good research out there on the harm reduction, but it's not like we're going to continue to do this because it's not profitable. So who the hell is going to fund that type of research?
Yeah. And you mentioned as psychiatrists how many people they've healed. You have obviously a patient number of 13,000. I'm curious, do you have like a success rate for those 13,000? Do you pull
We do.
Yeah,
we do.
What is
it? For people that have achieved remission or have significant reduction in symptoms, so for anxiety, I believe it's over 83%, and then for depression over 89%.
Wow.
And that's full like symptom relief.
89%?
Yes, which is unheard of in mental health. But it's not, and do I attribute this to ketamine? I think a part of it, but I think really what we focus on is the community, right? And the aftercare. And I think that's like so many mental health challenges, I think, can be like solved with somebody listening, somebody giving them a hug, somebody being there for them. And medication's our first answer, and that's just the way that mental health is treated. But it really, like, focusing on habit formation and focusing on the story that you tell yourself every day when you wake up, and what you say in your head before you go to bed, and the power of positive affirmations and yoga and breath work. Like, so many of our patients will say, "I'm not doing this positive. I'm not going to look in a mirror and say these things to myself. This is stupid. Yoga, what is this?" And we look at it differently in Southern California, but we treat a lot of people that aren't here.
Sure.
And then 3 months in, they're like, "I want to be a yogi." Yeah. like this is amazing.
Something to this. Speaking of the mirror,
I'm getting my whole community in on this, and so I think that for what we're trying to accomplish here is mental health support and figuring out what that means for everybody. And for at-home ketamine therapy, probably 20% of people aren't right for at-home ketamine therapy. That doesn't mean that you're not right for a good talk therapist. It doesn't mean you're not right for, like, let's take a holistic look at your mental health and get your blood work done and see, can we find some underlying things here that could be affecting your...
That's huge, I feel like.
Yeah, so we do. So when we got into weight loss, so a lot of before we got into holistic psychiatry, a lot of our patients would be struggling with sexual dysfunction or weight gain from antidepressants. So we're like, okay, let's start treating those two things. And when we did, we started finding like undiagnosed diabetes and all these other different things.
The lack of vitamin D.
Yeah,
right?
and like all these things that'll affect your mental health. So maybe the answer is not ketamine or Zoloft or whatever the antidepressant is. The answer is like, get more sunshine, take these vitamins,
some supplements,
start getting more sweat and more exercise, and let's start there, right? And so everybody's different, and I think it's about finding what works for you and not going to a traditional, like, at least in my experience with traditional mental health care, where it's very cookie cutter, and if you don't fit in that cookie cutter mold, even if you do, like, it's psychiatrists are all trained by the same, med school. Like in med school, it's all funded by pharmaceutical companies. And like when I ask psychiatrists, I'm like, how much of your time did you spend on getting educated on nutrition? And some 0, some it's like 4 hours. Like, so much of our mental health stems from nutrition, right? So I think
it's on your gut.
Functional medicine, talk therapy, ketamine therapy, like, these are they're all tools, right? And we got to figure out 1 or 3 things or 5 things, and how can we fill not just that cup, but every cup? Because without sweating, without sunshine, without social connection, Like there's no pill in the world that's going to make you happy. These are things that you have to do. And it's a lot easier to do when you have a community of people that support you in doing that, because when you grow up in a place where talking about your mental health isn't a thing, or doing things for your mental health isn't a thing, finding other people that are on that journey or that can support you during that, I think is the most important part.
100%. And this really resonates with me, Derek, because like, just to speak to the kind of testing component that you'll oftentimes do, like I've suffered immensely with my own depression, anxiety, and suicidality, even intermittently over the past few years since I started Cycle. And I was, really reluctant to pursue any sort of traditional mental health care, obviously, but primarily because I saw my mother go through this repeated pattern of pharmaceuticals, which in large part inspired the formation of Cycle and my passion for the industry. But come to find out, I did a functional test. I went to a doctor, did a full panel test, and I was suffering with symptoms in my gut and all sorts of brain fog and depression, anxiety, suicidality even. I had E. coli the whole time. I had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got that treated, and already, since I found that out a few weeks back, I'm feeling so much better. And I'm so glad that I didn't go to like a traditional pharmacist and just get on to the pill mill, right?
Yeah.
When I did ketamine therapy from Better You, I felt immensely better, and it was, an alleviation of the symptoms, but I had no idea that I had this root underlying cause.
Still had E. coli.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Ketamine's not going to fix that.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you do that sort of functional testing, I think it speaks volumes about how you see the person as a holistic, heart-centered being, opposed to just, a number or just a prescription. You know what I mean? Whether it's for ketamine or for an antidepressant.
And thank you, Danny, for sharing that. And I'm really happy that they found they found
Dude,
that.
It saved my life, just going to an alternative route from just traditional Western medicine.
And I think that's the most important thing, is like patients being informed that like you have a choice, and that it's not, go through your insurance, go see a psychiatrist, or go to your doctor. And it's a lot of times, most psychiatric meds, I think it's like 70% of them aren't prescribed by a mental health professional.
I think even more. Yeah.
And so people that don't have like really that proper training, but even the training, like
often.
Yeah.
So often, and they get on the wrong medication, and it makes them even worse.
Exactly.
Because they're misdiagnosed. Like bipolar disorder is misdiagnosed. They get on antipsychotics. They go into psychosis. Or they get that TD and their muscles in their face starts twitching.
Yeah.
It's
can perpetuate the problem.
Weight
gain.
So
to your point, it's like it's anxiety, and then or Adderall, you're staying up. Sleeping pills, you're depressed.
Yeah, it's not like let's pull back on the Adderall or hey, let's pull back on these antidepressants. Like actually, you have this, let's take a pill for that.
Let's double down.
You have a pill for that. Oh, you have a pill. It's Tuesday.
Like very concerning.
Yeah, it's Tuesday. You have a pill for that. It's Wednesday. You have a pill for that. And I think that it's and probably because we haven't we've been fortunate to build a company without outside influences, that it's not when there's so many people that need help, and there's so many people that are struggling with their mental health, that like it's not about how do we get money or get the most out of this patient, right? It's how do we provide the most value to these patients so they can solve the issue and then like get on with their lives, right? And ketamine therapy is a very, it's not a great business model, right? Because you give people a couple of sessions or a couple of months on it, and they're like, I feel amazing. Like,
you're in the business of healing people.
Go back out in the world, right? And so they're like, well, but this is that's it. I'm like, that's it. You're doing great. We have a talk therapist, and they're like, great, and they're off into the world.
Go get some sunshine.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that's what it used to be, and then now expanded, into more like, hey, like they're like, well, you guys have helped me a lot. Like, what else can I do to be better? And that's where we dive more into that kind of concierge and functional medicine piece, where we look at what's going on the inside, because a lot of times, there's just things that we don't know, right? So people take so many vitamins, and for no reason.
It's TikTok.
Okay. Yeah, it's supposed to be good for you. So get your blood work done and look at what you're supposed to, like what you're missing.
Take the ones that you need.
Take the ones you need, because your bladder, your liver doesn't need all that noise either.
Yeah.
So I think taking the approach of what it's personalized medicine.
Yeah, and I think that's 100% the future of mental health and health in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing, man. Kudos to you, man.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. I learned a lot about Better You today. Even, we've been working for a year together almost, and I learned new things today that like really have solidified my trust and my just admiration for you as a founder.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. And we're also moving into hospice care as well. So something that I shared early in the beginning.
Full circle.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really excited about it. We started in Arizona and working with, and obviously that has a lot more medical supervision.
For sure.
But it's we're doing it with a handful of different things and non-opioids and giving people a little bit of pain relief, but really giving them that, helping them through the mental journey at the end.
There's a lot of anxiety around
it's very
the
dark.
end of life. Where the hell am I going? What do I do? What do I bring?
And we come into this world alone and we leave alone. And it's it's very, very tough, but when we can change our perspective on it, or we can feel that sense of connection, that when people say that they're no longer afraid to die, it's really powerful and really beautiful. So I'm super grateful that we're able to now scale that piece of it and not treat a couple of people, but hopefully we'll be able to partner with a lot of hospice, with a lot of clinics and a lot of doctors to be able to provide that service. So super, super grateful.
Exciting stuff for 25.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. Where can we learn more information about Better You, about yourself?
So you got to go to betteryoucare.com, just the letter U. And all of our social media channels are at Better You Care. And for me, my cell phone number is for me. I go to my social media. It's Derek Du Chesne on LinkedIn. It's DEREK, last name DUCHESNE. And even if you have opinions on at-home ketamine therapy, please, happy to have that dialogue. If ketamine therapy, whether at home or IV, has helped you, please, I love to hear more about that. That's why I get out of bed every day. And if there is also something that is mental health or physical health related holistically, or vitamins or alternative therapies that have helped you, I would love to hear about them, because we're always looking for new ways that we can bring alternative evidence-based things to our patients. So thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely.
And thank you for the important work you're doing.
For sure.
Thanks for coming on and helping people break the cycle.
Yeah.
To find a better you.
Yeah. Hell yeah.